Welcome back to the 3F podcast. As always, your host, Timothy Clayton Cornell, and returning guest this week, Michael Kenny. How's it going, man?
Good, TJ. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited to talk to you today, following up all of our episodes on Huckle. Today, we want to talk about just straight business. But before we get to some official business, I have my dream of having a big sponsor. I've got my cream soda Zevia. Hopefully one day they will sponsor this podcast. Do you have anything yourself that you're drinking?
I do. I've got a Pellegrino over here, but I'm not looking for a sponsorship or anything.
Honestly, I feel like I've maybe like them too. So I might have to buy some more drinks for the podcast. Have 4 or 5 on the side when I start our episodes.
There you go.
I do want to give a quick shout out to everyone else, Rugby Department, Isogenics, Huckle as well. Thank you guys all for helping us host this podcast. So Michael, like we said, we've had you on before with Huckle. We've had you with 3 Big Wheels. That is 2 separate businesses that you have started from the ground up with some help, obviously. But I wanted to talk to you today about the building of a business. And I feel like the listeners can get a lot from that.
Sure.
So 3 Big Wheels came first. I know a lot of people, if they've heard our previous episodes, have heard you talk about your experience working in marketing with GoPro and a lot of other companies. But tell us when 3 Big Wheels got started.
Sure. So 3 Big Wheels I launched about 7 years ago, and it was right after I had left GoPro. I was at GoPro, and I was the first person that was hired to be in charge of global brand. And so it is a pretty neat honor. Nick Woodman sort of gave me that role. He had always been in charge of it, founder and CEO. And so I was the first person hired for that. So it was a great experience and great company. And I had an opportunity to work with more athletes than I ever had in my career prior to that. So I've been in marketing for 25 plus years. I've been in sports marketing probably for about 20 years. And even when I was in roles where there wasn't really a sports function, I always managed to bring in some type of sports element to it. I just love sports. And I think from a marketing perspective, I always knew that sports offers something very unique because people are engaged with it on a level where they're very passionate and interested. And if you look at it from a marketing perspective, when people are that engaged, the ability to give them messages when they're that excited is very powerful from a marketing standpoint. So at GoPro, I worked with a lot of the athletes. I was not in charge of the athletes. That was a sports marketing team. But from a brand perspective, I was working with all the athletes to figure out, were they a brand fit for GoPro? So they were great at their sport, but, were they doing the right things on social media? Were they keeping GoPro in the best light? That was me and my team. So I left GoPro, and I knew I wanted to work with athletes. And at the time, I was educating a lot of the athletes at GoPro on what does it mean to be a brand ambassador for GoPro. And I sort of took all of my years in marketing, all of my experience with athletes, and started 3 Big Wheels. And what we say is we help athletes build their personal brands. And what that means is we help them with any part of their life where they want to go into different areas and explore from a financial perspective. So that could be writing a book, speaking engagements, athletic camps, philanthropy, whatever those things are that are above and beyond their sports that they would like to do, we help them with. And when we first started talking about athlete branding to athletes, I realized that was a marketing term, and a lot of athletes didn't understand what that was. And so I put it in a context of coaching, and I was like, you have a coach on the field, we're your coach off the field, and anything that you want to do from a financial standpoint to leverage your name, image, and likeness into things that are more financial opportunities for you. And that was sort of the start of 3 Big Wheels.
Gotcha. So with some more high level views, obviously we went really deep into 3 Big Wheels last week too. You kind of found a space that you felt needed some assistance, that could use your expertise to where you could create a business and offer a product, which is coaching for athlete branding, and offer it to people, whether it be in philanthropy or what have you, and kind of bring that customer base in, right?
Absolutely. I didn't go into it blind. I certainly had done a lot of research on it. I had worked with a lot of athletes. I knew I was already doing that sort of coaching element to athletes that I was working with at GoPro. And so this was just sort of that evolution, the next stage for me. You're right that a lot of athletes, it's interesting because they have a circle around them. And a lot of the times these athletes were really, really talented at a very young age. And so the circle that's around them, usually family members, sometimes agents, but they're very focused around their athletic part, right? Because that's the thing that's earning them their money. That's their like bread and butter, if you want to call it that. But it's the thing that really is their livelihood, is their sport. And so we come in and we're a complement to that. So because of their sport, how can we leverage that into more things? And that's sort of where we come in. And certainly we're a different viewpoint and different sounding board than the people that have surrounded them since they were a child in more times than not. And what we find is we're a complement to that. We're not changing their dynamics of the people that surround them. We're helping them with something more. And so, yes, the marketplace was there. We saw a demand and we sort of went for it.
Yeah, and I think a good lesson is you obviously, I don't think this was a conflict of interest, between leaving GoPro and starting Three Big Wheels. It wasn't like you were going into the same spaces in a non-compete, but you realized that you could create something to go from a W-2 to being your own boss. And I feel like a lot of people may not realize that. They might be worried about a non-compete with their current business. But if you find something and you realize there's a space that can be filled, you can take your knowledge and experience and create your own business, create your own job, and all the things that come with it, and go into your own workspace and be a sole proprietor in LLC.
100%. I think, one of the things that I was told when I was doing, when I was starting my career was like, learn on other people's dime. So you're going to your job and you're doing the best that you can on your job, and you're learning all of these different things. And that was exactly it. So all of the years that I had done with all of the companies that I had worked with in my past were learning experiences for me to start my own job, and start my own company. And I think the thing that was the most important for me was I needed to make sure the marketplace was there. I needed to validate it before I was jumping ship from a large company like GoPro and say, I'm going to go out on my own. I had validated the marketplace. I had validated demand. You're right. There was no non-compete. I did not have anything in writing that said I can't go out and do this. Coincidentally, I didn't work with any of the GoPro athletes, so they weren't part of my roster. So there was nothing that was stopping me from starting my own business. And that was the thing that just became very exciting for me. So all of those years in my career led up to, okay, I'm iterating on this idea. I think there's something here. Let me test this. And then as soon as I got to the point where I was like, I think there's a marketplace here, that's when I started my own business.
Gotcha. And do you have any idea about how long that was between the thought process of maybe I should start on my own versus you are now your own 1099 employee?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think where I was at, and I think all marketplaces are going to be different. So my marketplace was athlete based. There was a lot of things happening in the marketplace where, things were changing from a media perspective. So if you look at all of the dollar amounts that are happening to professional athletes, those dollars are going to continue to go up and up and up. And then I also realized that you look at the level of competitiveness. So as an example, in the NFL, the average tenure for a player is less than 2 years. And I looked at that and I was like, what happens after this athlete has played their entire lives? They go to the big show, they're in the NFL, presumably they've made it, right? They're a part of a very, very small percentage. And then they're in the league for less than 2 years. Now what? And so I looked at these different tenures of athletes and I was like, okay, when they're doing their sport, how is it that they can capitalize on it and make more money while they're doing it? And if they do that really well, is there a way that they can parlay that into post NFL opportunities? And so that's where I looked at and was like, all right, I think there's something here. So that whole process of how do you help athletes? Where can you help athletes? What does the market look like? They've already got agents. How does this work with agents? I would say the entire process, conceptually, ideation, was 5 to 7 years. And then it came to, okay, I'm at GoPro. I'm now in front of a lot of different athletes. That accelerated the process of validate the marketplace. And then it was, all right, now let's test. Is there really a need? So I signed some professional athletes, both in the US and in Europe. And then there came this thing of they're already represented by their agents. And that's a whole different discussion, right? The agents, how they represent them. I've done a lot of work with agents and could give you a lot of feedback on the pros and cons of that. But a lot of the agents aren't necessarily looking for financial opportunities on a regular basis for the roster that may not be the top 5%. And so that means that while they're represented, they may not be getting deals and they may not have anybody looking for them getting deals. Well, in that scenario, how do you give those athletes some tools and how do you give them other financial opportunity? And that's where it came to play. So all of that, working with, William Morris Endeavor, CAA, IMG, the big representation firms, and working with athletes, like all of that, I was always had this idea churning in my head, and that ultimately culminated in then launching the business. But I would say it was like 5 years to 7 years all in of trying to figure it out and eventually going to do it.
Gotcha. So you had a plan. It's not like you just quit. You prepared for this. You spent a lot of time getting all the information together in order to venture out into creating your own business.
100%. In fact, if I were to say, there's a lot of times where I can tell you I was sitting in a cubicle in a large office space, and I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do this politicking anymore. I'm one of so many people in this organization. There were times where I was ready to just get up and walk out and say, I'm starting this thing. And at the same time, I was like, okay, learn on their dime, get the paycheck, keep doing this, keep challenging your ideas and make sure there's something there. And then when the time was right, yes, I walked out with a plan and a lot of knowledge base to know what I was going to do.
Okay, so you had everything set. Let's fast forward a few years now. You said you'd been in business for 7 years, right?
Right.
So you're in the marketing space. How often did you have to scale up as far as hiring employees?
I would say there were probably like 3 different times where we had scalability sort of demand issues. Now, the unique thing about my business is that we do a lot of content for our athletes. We work with athletes from all the major sports at this point. We do a lot of content with them. And so some of the scalability I do with freelance talent that I've worked with for years. And that's allowed me to do scalability based on demand. So that's the good thing. In terms of employees, we're just shy of 10 employees at this point. And we've got a decent sized business, and we've got a good level of demand. And now things are really changing in terms of this whole concept of what does it mean to build your personal brand, right? Because name, image, and likeness has started at the college level. Timing has really become very fortuitous for us. So I think that's one of those things where just building a business, like I never wanted to over-index on employees. I wanted to do it so that I knew the demand was there. I knew we had revenue that was coming in, that we could manage all of those employees, and we sort of built it from there. But I can tell you that we sort of got to the point where you're sort of busting at the seams, and then you have to figure out how are you going to bring on more people to do this, and is that a freelance person or is that a full-time employee?
Gotcha. So you had to make these decisions of contracting out or bringing somebody in.
Yeah, and I think our business is somewhat seasonal, because while they didn't want it to be that, our athletes, and we try to encourage them when they're in their professional sport and their training, that they should also be doing things that help them on their personal brand side. But I can tell you at that level of competition, athletes are like, I'm one focus and one focus only. That's training and being the best in my sport. And so what we find is when they're in season, our work with them probably fades off a little bit. It does fade off a little bit. And then when they're in the off season, they come back and they're like fully committed to figuring out other things that they want to do. So now the good thing is we've been able to figure out is we literally have a calendar which shows all the different sports and their seasons, which includes spring training or otherwise. And we have like sort of the highs and lows of any demand. And so we can plan accordingly, and we've done our hiring and freelance contracting the same exact way.
Okay. And now, do you think, just on the topic of marketing, because I know we're specific marketing with you, does all marketing kind of have those ebbs and flows in your experience?
They do. They absolutely do. You know, it really depends. So as an example, when I'll give you GoPro and Sony, where I worked at, there's times of the year where you launch products. And those are usually at the beginning of Q4. So you're going into your holiday season, call it like October timeframe. And the reason you're launching products at that time is because the biggest buying season, you know, the holidays, is right around the corner.
Yep.
So yes, you have cyclical things, and then you have a calendar of activities that are normal that come into marketing. So you think of Mother's Day, Father's Day, dads and graduation. So Father's Day and graduation. There's a number of things that are on Mother's Day, as an example. All of those things are on the calendar, which prompt gift buying. So from a marketing calendar and messaging, you're always touching on those different things. But in terms of an organization, yes, there are times where you're putting money down on the table and money in advertising in the marketplace because you're trying to create awareness around either a specific event, a product, or capitalize on leading into a buying season. So yes, it's very calendar driven.
Okay. So not to backtrack too far, but I don't want to miss the topic of, you know, the spending, especially when it came to early on. How did you get the funds to start and pay for advertisements for yourself?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Our business is not really driven by advertising or digital. Our business is really word of mouth. So we do work with professional athletes. It's a small group. They talk to their buddies. And so as an example, and I don't want to, a lot of our clients are under non-disclosure. So I won't mention any names of our clients, but I will say, you know, positions. So we work with several kickers in the NFL, and that's a small group. And so because of that, they talk to all of the other kickers in the NFL. And so we get a lot of business driven by our clients talking to their buddies, whether it's in the locker room or somewhere else, about the benefits that we're bringing to them, their family, their financial future, and all of the other things that we help them with. Those are the things that make it really rewarding for us, and that's how we drive our clientele. Now, going into what's happening right now, name, image, and likeness, yes, we will be doing advertising around that. That marketplace opens up a whole first of all, way more numbers. Secondly, it's something where we can create a groundswell because of the advertising, and we can get our name out there before our competitors. So we will be doing advertising on that. And in terms of a capital standpoint, you know, it's literally, where do you want to spend your money? You have a finite amount of money. How are you going to do that? And what's your first things first? And so for us, it was, what are the critical things that we need in place to be able to provide our business? And luckily, mine was more knowledge-based than any asset-based from a marketing standpoint. So we certainly had marketing decks and things that we would send to potential clients to say, here's what we do, here's some information about us. But then ultimately it becomes, if I can get them on a call, it's me and them and sort of walking them through what I can do. So ours is very much a very personalized business, and we get to help people on how we develop their careers and things beyond their sport to really help them. So, but I can tell you on any business level, it's literally a write down all the dollars that you have, write down all of the things where you're thinking of spending money, and then you prioritize. And the only thing that I can say on that is, if your list is too long and you don't prioritize things, then you dilute every one of those spends.
Yeah.
And then you're not successful on any of those. So what we always do is put the first list down, do our ask, and then let's put the reality on it. And the reality becomes, what can we actually spend? Will it make an impact if we do spend at that level? If it doesn't, how do we shift dollars to some other activity so that we're being successful on some of our other spends?
Gotcha. And I know you said a lot of your stuff was knowledge-based. Now, early on, did you need to raise funds and be able to start Three Big Wheels, or did you kind of save up money yourself to start this?
Yeah, so good question. Three Big Wheels was we did not have to raise capital, and that was my money, my money, my wife. You know, we had dialogue around this like before leaving GoPro. Like, is this what we actually want to do? Are we good with this? And we had a lot of conversation around that. So that was our money that we put into that. Huckle, totally different. We are raising capital, and that's you know, that's a whole different animal and platform we're building, and that, you know, it takes on a whole other conversation topic around how you start that.
Gotcha. Now, is there, just on the topic of like crowdfunding or anything like that,
Yeah.
is there some high level things you can say, especially since Three Big Wheels didn't really have anything that Huckle has had in order to bring funds on to start the platform?
Yeah, so you know, so Huckle as an example. So Huckle, we've had that, you know, a few conversations around that, but we built that again for athletes. And so everything that I was doing in Three Big Wheels, I thought, okay, and again, this is like iteration. I've been working with Three Big Wheels 7 years. It's like, how do I then bring this to scale? So I'm doing this very personalized service. How do I do this to hundreds, thousands of athletes, and not just domestically, globally? And so when you look at it from that perspective, and that was like, how do I scale this? How do I bring this to a larger number? That becomes a whole different business model and conversation. So from that standpoint, I went, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. We walked around with the idea and pitched people, and we're like, we've got this idea. I've been doing Three Big Wheels. It's been, you know, relatively successful on what we're doing. We believe there's a marketplace here. And a lot of people came back and said, you know, we like the idea, we like the concept, we like your background, but can you validate this model? So very similar to what I was doing when I started Three Big Wheels, they were asking for the same thing, potential investors. And so again, my wife Stephanie and I sat down and we're like, all right, do we want to do a go of this? And we had that actual dialogue, and we're like, all right, we're going to do this. And what I found was I was pitching an idea, and it's very difficult to just pitch an idea. And so what we decided was we were going to develop what is referred to as an MVP, a minimum viable product, which is, while you have all of these grand ideas of what the product is, this is the bare essence of the product that can validate the model. So what we built was a product that allows athletes to come on board, allows brands and companies to come on board, and then they can look at each other through interests and passions, and they can set up an opportunity, which is the actual marketing campaign a brand wants to do, and athletes can search that. That's all the platform is currently doing. But we have this whole roadmap of what we do want to build, meaning here are all the bells and whistles that we want to build out. So when we were at that point, I just decided, or Stephanie and I decided, we're going to put in the initial capital. And so we put in a good amount of money, and we built the MVP. And now I can go out to, and what we're currently doing is we're speaking with potential investors, and we're saying, here's where we're at. We built the MVP. We have skin in the game. We put in our money. We're going to keep the money in there despite when investment comes in. And we validated the marketplace. So now my pitch becomes way easier from an investment standpoint, because now it's not just an idea. It's actually something tangible that we have said actually works in the marketplace.
Gotcha. So you guys kept, whether it was through GoPro in your previous experience going into Three Big Wheels, and then with the Huckle platform, you guys kind of pulled your own money, worked real hard to create this idea, got told no a few times, but then went forward to like, we're going to put the money in here. Anything we get is reinvested. And then we're going to keep moving forward to try to find partners in the future.
Yes. The only thing that I would say would be different is we got told no a lot. In fact, one thing when you're raising capital, I heard this and I've done startups before, not where I was the founder, but I've been involved in startups. And if you can't take no a lot, you probably shouldn't go after it. You know, that's, and by the way, it's very difficult for me to hear no so many times and think that we still have something valuable. But when I flip that and I say, what are the athletes telling us? What are the brands telling us? Not like those things are all green lights and positive. And so I balance this, like, I'm hearing great things in the market of who our actual customers are. I just need to translate that to investors. And the investor thing is, it's a numbers game. So I have to be in front of as many people as possible. They have the best way to do it is through your own connection. So they're my friends and family, or they're 1 degree from me.
Yeah.
Somebody has vouched on my behalf. You can, look at Michael's idea. I know Michael. That gets me in the door. And then it has to be a space that they know. It has to be a space that they believe in, and it has to be a threshold of investment that they're interested in doing. So when you think of all of those things, it has to be a volume game, because as those things shake out, the numbers get smaller and smaller as to who your possible investors can be. So we got no's a lot. And I'm doing investment pitches right now. We're still getting no's a lot. And that's just sort of the nature of doing startups.
Yeah, I can only imagine how difficult it is being told no, no, no. Whenever you're kind of going with somebody, whether it is an amazing idea that has the end user backing you up, just someone that's willing to take that leap of faith and be like, all right, cool, here's your 10,000, your 500,000, your 1 million, whatever the amount is. If the person has the money, I can only imagine from your shoes and theirs, the differences of viewpoint of basically, do I trust this person enough and their product enough to be able to give me a return on investment?
Yep, it is that. And one of the things that I found doing this, and we're in dialogue with potential investors right now for Huckle, is that you can do all of these pitches, and they may be investors, but they may not know our space at all. And so, if you think of anything that you do from an investment standpoint, you research things, you make your investment based on bets and information that you have. So it's not dissimilar for investors in that they're trying to figure out a space that they know, they've got a knowledge base. And what I've found in this and other ventures that I've done, it's the people that are, and currently the ones that we're speaking with, it's the people that have been involved in sports, have been involved in advertising, have been involved in marketing, and they're like, oh, I get it. In fact, they say that right out of the gate. So I don't have to educate them on what we're doing. I just have to show them what our possibilities are on our concept and model. And that's where things really change and start to be compelling, is because now you're with people who get it. And when you're with that group, then it becomes real dialogue of like, here's the potential of what this can be. And you're having conversations speaking the same language.
Gotcha. And now I know we are in beta for Huckle, but you may have had come across this with 3 Big Wheels as well. When you get to the point of trying to pay back a sponsor, I know we have companies that brand partners on Huckle, but maybe someone who put capital forward. How do you go about paying them back?
Sure. So that's a good question. So you can set the terms on how you're bringing capital in. So there's a number of ways to do it. And there's a ton of ways to do it. In fact, a lot of ways, I'm sure, which I don't even know. But a lot of what we're looking for, and I'll give you sort of just our scenario to give you some background. We are what is pre-revenue. Actually, we're making revenue right now, but for all intents and purposes, we're still pre-revenue. So the round that we're looking for is a seed round. And so usually what happens is investors will come in and say, okay, I want to invest X amount of dollars. And for that amount, I want to get X% of the business. The challenge is, because we're pre-revenue, there's no real way right now to set a valuation on our business. It's not fair for me, the founder, if I give away too much. It's not fair for the investor if I give away too little. So the challenge right now is, how do you put a valuation on a business that is pre-revenue? Now, we can say that the valuation of the business is the capital that I put in, the product that has now been built. These are tangible things. But in terms of paying the investor back, it's the terms that you bring the investor in on. So for us, what we're doing is, and there's a number of vehicles that you can use in the financial space to bring investors on. So there's one which is a convertible note, which basically says, I'm going to pay you, as an example, we're going to invest $100,000. And with that, we're going to get a return on investment for a percentage annually. It can be any percentage you set, usually 5 to 7%. And what happens then is for that investment, they're getting, $5,000, $7,000 back in interest. Once the round is closed, that note converts into equity. And what they also do is a discount, which is, as an example, 20% discount. So they're getting $120,000 in value in equity for $100,000 investment. So it gives them an up, right? It gives them an upside right away. That's one thing. We're doing something which is called a SAFE agreement, which is a simple agreement for future equity. And what that allows us to do is bring in money relatively quick, and not work out the equity piece until we do a finance round where we're actually setting a valuation on the business. So what they're saying is, I'm going to bet on this. I'm going to get the early in, meaning I'm one of the first investors. So it is going to be better terms than anybody else, but we're going to wait to a point where there's a finance route that is qualified on a true valuation of the business versus doing a, this, pull it out of the sky type of valuation where it may not be fair for one of the parties. And in terms of paying back, our scenario right now is we're looking for high net worth individuals who want to keep the money in. And the majority of the investors we would like to have would be, we want them to wait for a liquidity event. So we either sell, we get acquired, we go public, whatever that version is, and that's when they get their payout. For us, it becomes very challenging to take on money where we know we're going to have to pay it back in a year because we don't know what our revenue opportunities look like from now until then. So we would rather have investors, and that our whole pool is to just say, we want investors that are going to be in on a long-term prospect rather than a short-term return and payback.
Yeah, I think that's a really good overview for all sides of the business too. Not just the marketing and the athlete side. Because I know Huckle, as you spoke before, pretty much everything is going to the athletes right now. So you're really hoping for that long term, someone who believes in it. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and it's probably going to be people who are prior athletes that want to see a platform like this perform well.
Yeah, I think we have athletes that are interested. We have people in advertising that are interested. And these are, great, fantastic people that, the thing that I also say for us as an investor, potential investor, is the money is one thing. And certainly the money is critical. But for us, we're interviewing our investors just like they're interviewing us. Meaning, I want investors to come to the table that bring something more than capital. They have connections in the advertising world. They have connections in the sports world. They can open doors for other finance rounds when we have them. Like those are the ideal scenarios that we want to surround ourselves with, that have a network and are also looking for the progress of the business. And so I can bring in money and they can be totally hands off. And people have written checks before where they're like, just let me know if it works or it doesn't work. And that's okay. And it's money, but I would prefer have somebody who's in it and is like, I'm also vested in this more than financially. This is an area that I can help by making a few phone calls. That's really important for us. And we want to surround ourselves by really smart people.
Yeah, I think building the community goes a real long way as well, making sure you have the best people around you that support it. And I will say this is also very similar to how real estate funding works when you come to syndications. I know we talked about real estate a lot in this podcast in previous episodes. So if anyone is more on the real estate side, you can still take something from this because it works in very similar ways with syndication, such as the equity position and the annual interest rate that you're paying in order to get someone's funds in order to buy a larger property. In real estate, where you pose the same issues, you talk about it's hard to do a valuation on a future property. If you're buying a large multifamily or commercial deal, you don't know how it's going to perform. You don't know if all the repairs you're going to make on a big property you're going to transfer over to a high income rental, or that you can sell it at a much higher price. Like you said, selling it in the future, going public. You never know that. So you're going to have to go with a lot of numbers, show the upside, as well as some of the potential, the averages, in order to try to get someone to back you and give you something, for a piece of the equity.
Yep, I can imagine. And this is what the only thing that I can control really is making any informed decision at any given point. Right. That's the best I can do. And certainly we're doing the hustle to make sure that we get all the business in that we can. I can tell you from an outreach standpoint of us reaching out to all my network of bringing brands on the platform and saying, we'll help you out with the marketing. We'll do a lot of hand holding so this is successful for you. That's all part of it. And once we get those success stories, the brands that are super happy with it, the content that we can develop from it that shows here's how this looks, and then athletes who are saying, I was successful in doing name, image, and likeness deals, and I enjoyed it. Like, if we get everybody talking in a positive light, then the ball starts rolling quicker and quicker, and that's what we're really working on doing right now.
Gotcha. So going into some of our final questions, you have multiple faucets as far as the business, what you do. What programs do you use that help your business?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I literally was just going through our software documents today of like all of the different tools that we use. So we currently have Slack for internal communications. Email is sort of a wait for me. I think for a lot of people. And Slack, if you're familiar with that, it allows you to communicate on specific topics more real time. We really enjoy that. We're not hiring locally. We certainly would hire local, but it's not a prerequisite. We're hiring talent. And one of the things coming out of COVID was, do you really have to be in an office? I think there's a lot of benefits of being in an office. And at the same time, if I can hire the best talent and they're not relocating to San Diego, I'm totally fine with that. So we need things that allow us to do communications that are real time, despite the fact that we're not in the office together. Slack allows us to do that. We have a social listening tool, Sprinkler. We have Bubble, which is our platform, which is no code. We have several marketing tools that we use. We have survey tools that we use for the marketplace. We've got a financial software program that we use. So we're sort of, we bring the tools in that we can. One thing that I have noticed is that just for as long as I've been doing this, I've never found a tool that does it all. So my mindset is find the right tool that works for your organization at any given point and use that tool. So finance tool is one thing. Social listening is another. Survey is another. It doesn't have to be one tool for all of those. And that's sort of set the stage for us to be successful. Now, will we grow out of these things? Possibly. But are they tools that we use right now that are imperative for the business? The answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I can for sure see how marketing can really change the type of tools that's used. I grew up in a locksmith that my dad owned, learning the ropes from his business, and that's how I got my start business. And almost everything was through QuickBooks. Yeah. But in marketing, you can't run everything through QuickBooks. That's more of your basic, maybe labor intensive or inventory based career field. You're not going to be able to do CRM, your customer relation through that. You're not going to be able to do all communications through that because you're not inventory and payroll. You have a lot more than that.
It's exactly right.
Do you use any virtual assistants as well?
It's interesting. I don't, but I'm looking at those. They're actually quite compelling. And right now, it's where I'm at is we have all of these things that are on our list when capital comes in. We're looking to raise $1 million in this round, and we've had conversations of doing a larger round. My concern with that is I have to give more of my company away, and I would rather use the $1 million, build the company, get revenue, have a higher valuation, and then bring in my next round. So I have this list. Virtual assistant is one of those things. We want to optimize once we have money in the door where we're spending the right time at the right places to be able to build the business. And that comes with a lot of tools so that we're not manually doing things like a lot of the things that we're doing manually right now.
Yeah, I think I don't think I'm at the point yet where I would need a virtual assistant by any means, but I know a lot of people that run businesses, and especially in shoes like yours, they talk about the value of their time.
Yeah.
And you guys, you and your wife and the local team and the Three Big Wheels team, you guys do so much. If you're doing data entry or dialing phone numbers to follow up on something, could that time be better used somewhere else? And obviously, you know this, I'm saying this for the listeners, but the value of your time, if you can pay someone $17 to $20 an hour to dial those phones for you, where you can go do the $300 or the $150 task, it might be a better use of their time. So if anyone wants to know why a virtual assistant may be useful, I feel like that's a very good point.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. It's all about like time management, time optimization. And I think or at least how I look at it right now, I'll always be doing the imperative things, but there are some very big imperative things for us as a business right now. Raising capital is one of them, first and foremost. And once that happens, it allows us to then say, okay, the capital's in, we've got a little breathing room, we've got some runway. Now, and we've got the plan in place. Now, how do we execute on the plan? But I completely agree with you that there are things that you can take out of your daily activities so that you're optimizing for the bigger picture. And sort of like, as you mentioned, the phone calls, the follow-up, that can be done by other people on the team or virtually. That, allows you to accelerate. Everybody's accelerating because jobs are put in the right hands.
Yeah. And so the last thing I want to leave with, it's still on the same topic. We've talked about fitness and finance throughout the last multiple episodes with you. On the family subject, you're family man, you're married with kids. I know your kids are a little older now, but you've been a part of multiple startups. You've worked real hard to start Three Big Wheels and now Huckle. From a time perspective, what is some advice that you can give someone who wants to create their own business?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I think, time is finite. So how you allocate that on any given day, on any given hour, on any given minute is crucial. And that's something that I look at very pragmatically. And when I say pragmatically, I mean, there are buckets that I put time in, which is, you mentioned family. So if you're all work, and by the way, I've been in modes where I've been completely all work, you're so out of tune with the bigger picture of life that it's not healthy for you. And so the family time is something where you get to be grounded again. You get to realize why you're doing everything else. It makes everything more meaningful. And then when I look at that from like, I call it your pie of everything that you can be doing. So fitness is one of those things. Family is one of those things. Business is one of those things. And then all of the other things that you as an individual and your interests have make up your pie. And so I found that the happiest times I've ever been in my life is when I give time to each parts of those pies in my life so that I have a balanced approach. Now, granted, as you're building a startup, you have to be doing all of the work. It is intensive. And, if you're not doing the work, you don't have a roster of people who are doing the work. So it is left up to you. The only thing that I have been able to do, and, certainly I've done it successfully at times and unsuccessfully at times, is try to continually wake up every single day and say, it's not just about the business and it's not just about the work. There's all of these other things that make life absolutely incredible. Family being a very large part of that for me. And so that's been the thing on a daily activity. Wake up, set your intentions. How do you do that so it's meaningful and you're present in all the things that you're doing, and make sure that you're paying attention to all the pieces of your pie? That's how I've done it. And granted, I can tell you that there have been times in my life where it has been all work. And I used to travel for GoPro internationally, where I would be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And that's incredibly taxing on your family. So, you look at that and you say, okay, you did all those hard work. Now you're doing this, you get to do it for yourself. How do you do the hard work and keep the big picture in perspective? And that's the only way I've been able to do it.
Gotcha. I think that is a really powerful thing, and I hope a lot of people can take away from that. So, Michael, thank you so much for all the insight you've given us over the last few weeks and multiple episodes going back all the way to October. Thank you for your time today. Definitely going to help me out trying to deal with the business side. And I look forward to having you and everyone on Huckle back soon.
That's awesome, TJ. Thanks for having me. And I hope you get that drink sponsor.
I'm hoping to. Let's keep our fingers crossed on it and pray on it.
All right, TJ. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael. You have a good one.
You too.